We now come to the debate recommended by the Backbench Business Committee on the reform of support arrangements for people infected with contaminated blood. Diana Johnson to move.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I rise to move the motion standing in my name and the names of my right honourable and honourable friends. Can I first of all thank the Backbench Business Committee for granting time for this debate today. And this topic was actually the first debate that the Backbench Business Committee scheduled after they had been established in 2010. And it's a very sad fact that 6 years on we're still fighting for justice for those affected by the Contaminated Blood scandal. And it was in 2010 as well, during the general election campaign, that my constituent Glenn Wilkinson with his wife Alison came to see me. And they told me about Glenn having been given infected blood during dental treatment at Hull Royal Infirmary, and how it had affected his life, his health, his opportunities for work, and impacted on his family. And from then on, I began to find out about the biggest treatment disaster in the history of the NHS. Yes, very happy to.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady for Kingston-upon-Hull North for giving way. Last year, my constituent, Eddie Quigley, came to see me in my office. Sadly, he has since passed away, and I'd like to sincerely thank the Honourable Lady for her persistence in bringing forward this debate on behalf of his son James and his widow Sally, for her persistence in ensuring that this issue is properly discussed.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for those comments, and I too have received many emails and letters from all over the country of families that have been affected. Sadly, I can't refer to all of them today, but I do want to just set the scene and comment on the government's proposals that we're discussing this afternoon, and I'll try and do so fairly briefly to allow, I'm sure, many other honourable members who wish to speak and talk about their constituents' views of the consultation. So we know that governments of both colours have introduced a patchwork of schemes and assistance over the years, but there's never been a complete package of support for those affected. And this, of course, is in marked contrast to other medical and treatment disasters, such as thalidomide, where full support and compensation was put in place. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sure the whole House wants to pay tribute at this stage to all those who have fought for justice over many years and their families and loved ones who've supported them in doing that. Yes, very happy to give way, yeah.
Giving way. As you've mentioned the various schemes that have been put in place, but would you agree with me that the actual process of applying and getting through that is very, very difficult, particularly for people that are obviously so ill?
Absolutely. My honourable friend makes a very important point, and I'm going to come on to that shortly. I'm just going to make a little bit of progress, and then I will take an intervention. I just was paying tribute to all those who fought for many years, and I think we'd all agree that they've been fighting for too many years to get a fair and just settlement for what actually happened to them. And let's be frank, they are weary from fighting. They want to resolve this once and for all and to get on with their lives. And very sadly, more and more people are dying without seeing that justice. And each individual affected has been robbed of many of the opportunities that we all take for granted. To work, to have a career, to buy a home, to grow old with the person that they love. And also family members who've had to care for their loved ones, perhaps giving up careers to do so, and then to watch their loved ones' health deteriorate. I'm happy to take an intervention.
And she's been tenacious in her pursuit of this issue. And this is an issue that's been on for many, many years. Like, well, I've got constituents that's been affected by this. And it's about time this was brought to head and action was actually taken. You mentioned the thalidomide situation. That took many, many years. It took a determined minister to introduce that. And if he could have done that, I can't see why this minister can't.
Grateful for my honourable friend's comments. I'm just going to make a little bit of progress. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it's important to recognise that there's never in this case been an admission of liability from the Department of Health or the NHS about what happened to these individuals. They've always taken the view that no one could have known at the time about the problem with the infected blood. But I want to make the point that this is not a court of law. This is Parliament, and we're being asked to deal with a clear wrong that's been done to our constituents. And we know that these people were damaged and harmed by the treatment they received from the NHS by the state. And what we need to do now is put together a proper support package to ensure that those affected and their families are at the heart of what we do and whatever scheme is proposed. I'm happy to give way.
I do thank the Honourable Lady for giving way, not least because I apologise, I have to leave very shortly, but I commend her for her sterling work on this cause. In the case of my constituent, Mr Tony Farrugia, and his brothers who are campaigning here today, the situation was exactly what she says. It's the complexity of all of the schemes. In his case, because his father died in 1986, before the trust was set up, so his mother never received any money at all. And that still remains the case today under what's being proposed, which seems very unfair to me.
I agree with the Honourable Gentleman, and I will give way to the Honourable Lady.
I'm grateful to her for giving way, particularly because she has made such great inroads on this subject. I commend her for that. But would she agree with me, particularly in the context that she set out, that it is completely unacceptable that any reform that the government brings forward should make sick people even worse off? That just seems to be the height of injustice. And one of my constituents will lose £500 a month. Another one is in the gallery today, Graham Manning, and they need to see that justice is being done. That has to be a bottom line.
Absolutely, I agree entirely with what the Honourable Lady says. Just going back to my point about liability and about the need now to set in place a proper support package, recognising the wrong that's been done. I think for far too long the Department of Health haven't done that, and it appears that they, to me, have been far more interested in protecting the institutional reputation of the Department of Health and the NHS, rather than looking to right a wrong. Now, in the last Parliament, there was a concerted effort from all parties to seek a lasting settlement for all our constituents. The APPG led the way in producing a report which showed that the current financial arrangements were not fit for purpose, they were ad hoc and overly bureaucratic, and the Right Honourable Member for North East Bedfordshire worked alongside the APPG with the Prime Minister's office to finally get an apology made in Parliament and an agreement that the government would consult on a proper support package for all those affected. And I think the Prime Minister's apology a year ago and the announcement that £25 million would be made available for transitional support was very welcome. So too was the promise that there'd be a full consultation on a comprehensive support package. But I have to say to the Minister, not one penny of that £25 million has been spent yet, money that is badly needed by the people affected. And the consultation, I will in one moment, and the consultation on the new support scheme was only announced on the 21st of January this year, some 9 months later after the Prime Minister's statement. I'm happy to give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and like many here, I have a constituent here today, Sue Sparks, who's visiting and in the gallery. But isn't the issue today that consultation doesn't seem to chime at all with the apology, and that what is on offer in no way seems to reflect what I'm sure was meant as a sincere apology by the Prime Minister?
The Honourable Friend makes an important point, and we're now just a few days away from the end of the consultation period, and I will in one moment. And I understand that the Minister was advised, I think wrongly, that by her officials in the Department of Health, that she couldn't meet with the all-party group during the consultation period. Now, I know in Scotland that was not the case during their consultation. In fact, the Minister met with MSPs and individuals. And that's partly why we're here today and why we call for this debate, so the Minister can listen to what her fellow parliamentarians have to say about the government's proposals and feed this into the consultation. I'm happy to give way.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. And I have many constituents in Taunton Deane, Madam Deputy Speaker, whose lives are blighted by this issue of contaminated blood. And whilst I do applaud this consultation that the government has brought forward, there are many that believe it's only adding fuel to the fire, in fact making the situation worse and causing more pain. Not least the fact that in Scotland, people suffering there may potentially get a better deal than those in England. So I would urge the Minister to look very carefully again at the consultation, so as not to penalise people already badly suffering.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to move on to highlight a few of the problems with the consultation that's been set out by the government. First of all, as has already been said, it seems that many of the existing recipients will receive lower payments from the new revised scheme. The government's proposals would end all discretionary support, such as winter fuel allowance, child supplements and low-income top-ups, meaning that many people will potentially lose out, some by thousands of pounds each year. Secondly, most of the current beneficiaries have hepatitis C stage 1 and currently get no ongoing support and are left begging for individual payments from the Caxton Fund. Now, the government's proposal will provide annual payments for people in stage 1, which I think are welcomed. However, they will be subject to regular individual assessments. This could result in fluctuating payments and reduced financial certainty for individuals. And assessments will only take into account clinical factors. They won't, for example, look at the loss of education or employment, or decades of loss of amenity, ill health and loss of earnings. And I just wish to complete this point. And it seems to me, from the information the government have provided, those assessments are going to cost £500,000 a year to actually undertake. Now, I say to the Minister, wouldn't that money be better spent, used to support people financially themselves and to pay for that amount of assessment? Yes, I'm happy to give way.
Well, Lady for giving way, and congratulate her on her determination and her championing of this issue. Would she agree with me that a further problem with the consultation, and she highlighted the decades of ill health and for many, it's emotional stress and trauma. But the consultation process itself has actually, for some of those people, added to that burden. And that's certainly the message I've had loud and clear from my constituent, Mike Webster, who came to see me on this issue.
Makes a valid point there. I'm just going to proceed with the concerns that I have with the consultation, because I do want other honourable members to speak as well in the debate. The third point I want to make is about the inadequate provision for the affected community, that is the widows, the partners and the dependents of those infected. The proposals for widows appear to be extremely complex. The government's proposals create 6 categories of widows, with big variations in what is offered within each category, and Department of Health officials couldn't explain how this will work when they met with the APPG Secretariat, and have not provided an explanation of these proposals as promised. And there appears to be nothing for dependent children. Fourthly, Madam Deputy Speaker...
Point as well.
Yeah?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. I have constituents who are infected, but I also have constituents' partners who have been infected and who now cannot, for example, because of the failure of the scheme, get insurance for themselves. And therefore they're very worried, having had young children, about the long-term implications. And doesn't the proposal add extra stress to what is already a very stressful situation?
I think my honourable friend makes a very important point there. I do want to move on. So fourthly, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are concerns that under the plans, money is going to be used to pay for new drugs to treat hepatitis C, which will be bought separately from the NHS budget and therefore cost more. And under NICE guidelines, everyone with hepatitis C should be eligible for treatment with the new generation of drugs from the end of February 2016. So in allocating funding for treatment, this will again mean that money is not going directly to those who need financial support.
Will she give way?
Yeah, happy to give way.
I wonder if my little friend who's making an excellent speech would agree with my constituent who is affected and it really feels that these changes are deliberately punitive and exceedingly cruel, in that they're using changes, a request for changes to support schemes to affect people in this way, that the person has to use the ex gratia payment used by the government to fund the treatment refused by the NHS, as many people have had to do, and will then see his annual payment decrease over time and lose the additional support currently provided. People like my constituent are hit again and again and again. And how can reform and the consultation on reform go ahead given that basis?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am just going to move on and complete what I want to say. Fifthly, a real concern is about the possibility that beneficiaries in England will be worse off than those in Scotland. The Scottish proposals are far more generous to hepatitis C stage 2 and HIV sufferers, who will receive £27,000 per annum or £37,000 if they're co-infected, and this is welcome. But the proposals are much less generous for hepatitis C stage 1s, who will receive an additional lump sum payment but no ongoing support. However, I think it is important to note that the Scottish proposals have been broadly welcomed, and I think this is partly because of the way the consultation has been conducted in Scotland and the clear acknowledgement, for example, that the existing trust structure will be scrapped. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very conscious of time, and I think I'm already probably getting to my allocated 15 minutes. So if honourable members don't mind, I am just going to complete this. The other thing I just wanted to raise on that point about the acknowledgement around the existing trust structures being scrapped, which the Scottish model will do, I would seek reassurance from the Minister that she intends to scrap the trust structures that exist in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, because they have been subject to much criticism. There's also no mention in the consultation about any proposals around lump sum payments, which would enable those affected to make real choices about their own lives, such as paying off a mortgage or clearing debts or helping their children. And I want to reiterate my belief that the £230 million that the government are set to receive over the next few years from the sale of Plasma Resources UK Limited should be earmarked for lump sum payments for these people. This is money from the Department of Health's work creating blood products, and it would be fitting to use this money in this way. I'm also disappointed with the government's proposals that there's no mention of allowing those who've been affected to be automatically passported through to the new benefits which are being introduced, for example moving from DLA to PIP. And there's no mention or consideration at all about using the Irish-style medical card to ensure that access to health care is as speedy as possible. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think we've now had a chance to consider the details of the government's proposals. I'm disappointed that I don't think they deliver what we all want them to deliver, to give people dignity and to allow them to get on with their lives, rather than constantly having to battle to get support. Currently, this means campaigning to ensure their lives don't get even worse, let alone see any improvements. They need and they deserve action in a timely manner. They do not want to end their lives as campaigners. Many of those infected have told me that they believe that the government is just delaying making a proper settlement as more and more of these people die. And after their long and bitter experience, who can blame them? As the former co-chair of the APPG, I'm very happy just to give way briefly.
That was the point I was going to make, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to thank the honourable lady for having co-chaired this all-party parliamentary group for Contaminated Blood with me and many others in the last Parliament. And does she agree with me that the Minister should see that we have a framework with the settlement in Scotland, which does need some tweaking, and also our very comprehensive all-party group report, which looked at the way the trusts and the funds didn't operate in supporting the victims of this, and that if they heed that experiences in Scotland and in our report, we can start helping the victims.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and I think he speaks with wisdom in this matter. I think it's now time for the biggest treatment disaster in the history of the NHS to be settled once and for all. And I hope the Minister will look again at these proposals which she's put out in her consultation and think actually what is in the best interests of this group who've been so badly treated for so many years.